And thank you also to Ohavi Zedek for welcoming us now for 3 years into your space. We know for many of you sitting here today, this might be your first time visiting a synagogue, and we want you to feel welcome. Today on our field trip, we are going to be thinking about the word resistance. This is going to help us as we're launching this unit that's happening in all of your English and civics classes. You might hear the word resistance and think first of activism, maybe marching in the streets, going to a protest to voice your resistance, maybe standing up to an oppressive force, and that absolutely is resistance. But resistance also can come in quieter forms. Perhaps that means speaking a language that is not the dominant language, or teaching it to your children so that language does not get lost. Maybe it's cooking a favorite dish from home that is far away and passing along that recipe so that many generations later can enjoy it. Or learning to sing songs from a culture that is not the dominant culture, and on and on. Resistance has many sides and is a powerful part of us being humans, especially as we think about it at this moment in history. We hope that when you leave here today from this field trip, you will begin to explore resistance in new ways, and you'll be ready to think about our 9th grade resistance project, which will be launching in all of your English and civics classes sometime in the next 1 to 3 weeks, depending on who your teacher is. The Lost Mural Project has already asked that they share your projects with them, and often we publish some of the top projects on their website. They've also asked this year that maybe some of your top projects would actually come to be displayed here in May, because they're having a big anniversary party and they'd love to share your work. So we cannot wait to see what you choose to research for those projects and what you create in the coming months. On the top of your handout, it reads, there's a goal for today, and I want to just read that to you. It says to see, hear, and experience real-world examples of resistance in the face of cultural erasure. Specifically, examples of resistance that exist here in Burlington, Vermont, our community. We will launch our Resistance Museum project after returning from this field trip, and students will be asked to research an act of resistance in the face of erasure. Let today spark and deepen your thinking about this important topic. Today, you will have a chance to bear witness to many stories, and I'm going to introduce our other guests here in a minute, that were born elsewhere, but these stories now reside here in Burlington, Vermont. This is a great honor for you and a great responsibility, especially in this moment of history where it would be easier not to draw attention or celebrate the many cultural roots that we have sitting right here with us in this room. But that is the opposite of what we're doing today with this field trip. Today, that is especially prepared for you BHS 9th graders. We want to make space for all of us and all of our stories that Burlington holds within it, and we want to celebrate that. Elie Wiesel, the author of Night, which we are all reading in English right now, says, I firmly believe that whoever listens to a witness becomes a witness. So those who hear us, those who read us, must continue to bear witness for us. Until now, they are doing it with us. At a certain point in time, they will do it for all of us. We hope you will all rise to this occasion today to bear witness with your whole selves. And I just want to add, another quiet but powerful form of resistance is actually hearing and holding other people's stories. Be curious today, ask good questions, and a reminder, of course, to be respectful as guests. Aaron Goldberg is going to briefly introduce himself and welcome you, and then I'll introduce our speakers.
So thank you all for coming, and thank you to Ohavi Zedek Synagogue for hosting us today. Thank you to the BHS teachers for participating with us for this 3rd year and of the BHS Resistant Field Days with the Lost Mural Project. A special thank you for the speakers and CCTV for coming to cover this event. It will be broadcast on CCTV. I recognize that many of you may be feeling afraid of what's happening in the national news. You're here and actively listening to today's speakers, or being here and actively listening to today's speakers is a way for all of us in our local community and within the safety of these synagogue walls to respond to the language of hate now being spoken at the highest levels of our national government. Your being here is itself an action which will help us all withstand executive orders which is designed to break down communities and create distrust and fear among us. It is vitally important to continue to find and keep avenues of dialogue open to share our immigrant histories and our experiences. As Joy said, we're also working with the teachers to bring your artwork up in May. That is the 10th anniversary of the Lost Mural being inside the synagogue building, and we look forward to working with you.
So I want to introduce our speakers for today. So I'm going to just have you kind of stand and wave. The first speaker today is Noor Bulle, who many of you may know. He is a multilingual liaison, one of ours in Burlington School District for Somali and Migmar. And he is also a BHS graduate. And he will talk a little bit more, but he moved to the US from Kenya, but his family has Somali roots.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. That's what it means in Arabic. It's a greeting for Islamic comment. I'm truly honored to be here with you today for Resistant Day of Learning. As you start your journey as a freshman, I want to take a moment to talk about the importance of standing strong in the face of challenges and resisting and pressure that may come your way. First, I want to thank all the staffs and everyone who helped organize this wonderful event. A special thanks goes to Ms. Hurst. The energy and the time she dedicated to this event is remarkable. Thank you very much. My name is Noor Bulle. I work as a multilingual liaison for the Burlington School District, helping students and family who speak Maimai and Somali for almost a decade. I was born in Somalia, but raised in a refugee camp in Kenya. Many people ask me why I grew up in a refugee camp instead of my home country. The civil war in Somalia forced many people to flee, ending up in the refugee camp in Kenya. The journey from Somalia to the border of Kenya was very dangerous, and many lives were lost along the way. Some people were killed by gunfires, others died, lack of food, water, energy. Vulnerable people fall victims to wild animals, and many got sick and died. Thankfully, my family and many other families made it in the refugee camp very safely. As you guys know, the refugee camp that we were taken was not a camp that people lived first. It was a new camp, and it was just a forest. And many people, when you guys say refugees, there's not any good refugee camps at all. It is like a concentration camp. In that forest that we were there, we were told that it's going to be temporarily. But it ended up being, some people live in there decades, some people live in there 20 years, some people still live there. My aunt still lives there. She's 91 years old, hoping someday to relocate herself in some other places to live a better life. But to tell you the truth, in that refugee camp was scary as just was in the war. When the sun rises down around 7 o'clock, I can hear the wild animals. The hyenas were very famous because they laugh like a human being. Very scary. In the middle of the night, you wake up and you hear people laughing and you think it's a human being, but it's not. It's the hyenas. And, but also, one of the things was that, in that camp, since we were the first people, in the morning we used to line up for food. Imagine you line up for food with your parents and everybody like on the lines, because all the food was cooked in one area, one place. So that means like in the morning they cooked porridge, and you line up. If you miss, you missed it. There's not coming back. But also lunchtime, they made rice and beans that is boiled together. And they put a little bit of salt while it's cooking. And at the end, when they serve you, they put a little bit of oil. My wife actually made it yesterday. The kids love it. But, for those kind of stuff, it's just like, the kind of life that we lived on for many years. But then Later on, the refugee got expanded. It was, people were, fleeing from their country, and many people end up in the refugee camp. So the strategy of cooking food was not working for us. The UNHCR decided that to give us a card and a tent that everybody can live on, the United Nations High Commissioners. And that card is every 15 days you provided food. Like let's say if you're a single person, you get 1 cup of oil, you got 1 cup of beans, you got 1 cup of porridge, you got 1 cup of flour. At the beginning, they also were given, we were given to onions, a little bit of onions. But you have to stretch this food for 15 days. You see, what I just tell you right now, as someone who work out very regularly, I can eat 2 days. But you have to stretch this for like 15 days. And many people were unfortunate, they couldn't make it. Like people like us, we had a large family. We were 5 kids, my mom and dad. So it was kind of last a little bit for us. But people who were single, it was impossible for them to stretch it that much. You see, because some of us in our family eat more than others, because the little ones, they don't eat much, so I eat them for them. So we lived in that kind of situation for many years. Later on, the refugee was like keep pouring on it. Many people start coming and, they cut certain things, certain food. They had to cut it because it was kind of impossible to provide for all those people. And something that I can recall is that sometimes the neighbors, they run out of food and going to the other neighbors and saying that, hey, can I borrow like a cup of, rice or a cup of flour? From my memories, people there were very, very kind. When the struggle comes, everybody's kind. Everybody loves everybody else. In that refugee camp, people helped each other and they uplifted each other. And I remember that we had like 2 cups of maize left, and somebody in the neighbors came and they needed a cup of maize, and my mom gave it to them. And that was something that I learned from it, always to be kind to your neighbors. But after living there for many years, we got a process. The process is when you go into other countries. Australia came, they picked a couple of people, a couple of refugees, a couple of families. And then the UK, came. They picked a couple of families. We were still there. And America came, and we were told that it's our time to leave. After 10 years living there, but you have to go through so much process. And it's very lengthy, very long. And you have to be patient. Like I said, when you live in a refugee camp, so you're not allowed to go outside of refugee camp, because refugees means like you are burdened from the country. Like for example, Kenya, we're not allowed to go in Kenya if you don't have a legal document. So that means we have to stay there and survive. You have to find a way to survive. Later on, we got the process, and we were told that within 2 days, they're gonna ship us to another refugee camp. It's called Kakuma Refugee Camp, very larger than the one that we lived in. And that's what they did. They told us to give everything that we have away because we are now going to stay there more than a week. So my parents give some of the stuff away, but later on they heard rumors that the people that were taken before us, they said that, hey, we are here, it's very ugly here, it's worse than where we lived. Make sure that if you have something special, bring it with you. Don't leave it behind. We had a bike, a very big bike. It's not the kind of bike that we drive here. It's a bike that's made, it was like almost a border. Well, it's called like, it's like a taxi. You could use it as a taxi, you can use that bike. It's a very big bike. And my dad decided that we can take the bike with us, and then we end up in Kakuma Refugee Camp. They were right. We end up living there for another 2 years. And I remember my family and I, we were eating cabbage as the source of meat because we could not afford to buy certain meals. Within that 2 years, some students, some of the, our siblings end up going to schools, except me. It didn't work for me in the system the way it was learned. I couldn't learn because I was someone who always hungry. I cannot focus. But my brother was very gentleman, so if you give him a cup of porridge, he's fine all day. So for me, it didn't work for me. So I always went to to the market and help people, and they give me food in exchange, so I eat. That's how I lived. But later on, when we get the process again, we were called for last interview, what is called last interview. And that last interview, they pick a random people from your family. So that happened to be me. So since I was not going to school regularly, my parents thought that it's not a good idea for me to go there. But they have no choice, so I have to go because my name was on a board. So I went there, what is called the JVA and IOM office, and all my siblings and my parents came waiting outside to hear the result or the outcome. So I went in there was a Somali interpreter. And the reason they do these interviews is because there were certain people who lived a little bit better life, and they were paying for these people who were struggling some money to exchange for their kids. So they have to do really, really good research, good interviews and stuff to make sure that this is your kids. So what happened is that when I went there inside, they understand that the guy that was interpreting, they told him that he can go, he can leave the room. So they left me there, and I didn't speak English at the time. So I was nervous, shaking a little bit. It was a black American. He was doing the paperwork. Everything was handwritten at the time. They were not using computers and stuff, so they were just writing things down. They had a computer, but mostly things were used by hand. He asked me 2 questions, and God made it easy for me. He says, if you go to America, what are you going to do? I answered with 2 words. I say school and football. That's it. And he told me that you were done, you're good to go. And I didn't understand what he was talking about. So I'm still there. And he looked at me and he says, you can go. So I left the room. And when I went to outside and my parents asked me, what did they really tell you? And I said, well, he just did everything he needed to do, and he only asked me 2 questions. There wasn't any interpreter. So I was asked to just leave. They find it hard to believe that. So the worry came. My parents are worrying. Maybe I said something wrong and everything. But lucky enough, 3 days later, our flight came. And everybody was happy, and they were like, oh, you did a great job and everything like that. But I did nothing, so. But they were happy to see that we now about to fly. So our flight came. They took us from Kakuma to Nairobi. And many people also were returned from Nairobi. So in Nairobi, they told us that we will just stay there 1 day. But we end up staying there again another week. Eventually, we were lucky to go from Nairobi to New York City in a flight. We come to New York City. Our flight left us, so we had to spend a night in New York City. And the next day, we came to Vermont. When we came to Vermont, that's when we felt like, okay, now we are in our final destinations. So when we came to Vermont, my brother was already 18. He couldn't go to school, but I was only 14. So I had the opportunity to go to school. I remember in my interview, I promised to go to school and play football. So I started high school as a freshman. And the only language I speak, to be honest, was playing football. I play soccer, and I was very good at it. So I started Yale class with Miss Blossom. You guys know Miss Crowther. She was my first teacher. She was the first person who taught me English. Speaking English was not too difficult for me because I played soccer with American students who were born here, raised here. And as a freshman, I made a varsity. But I was very small. I was only 110 pounds, as you know. So I had to get a lot of injuries. But it was good. I enjoyed it. and I was learning English very fast. You know, going through high school was not an easy journey for me. But my junior year, I exited EL class and started going to mainstream class, which made me very proud. I had to work very, very hard. I used to go outside of, after school, I used to go visit a lady named Lauren. I appreciate her. She probably will see this video. And she was helping me with my homework. I was going to her house every single day. Because I was a very shy person. Like, I felt a little bit shy to really ask questions in front of teachers sometimes. Or when Mr. Mo, I remember, used to help us in the library with my math, I kind of feel embarrassed to ask him questions. I needed one-on-one, like somebody who can stay there for me to help me, because everything was new to me. So I used to go find help outside of the class, outside of the school, and it was working for me. And later on, to be honest, in my senior year, I wanted to be the speaker of the graduation ceremony. Now I felt very confident in my English. I was still not, fluent. I'm still learning today. But I had the confidence to really stand in front of people and give a speech, because my stories, I felt like it's unique, it's different. Every year we're telling the same story. I say, that's boring. Let me tell you something different, right? So I was not, because I was not very popular in the school, so I was not voted to speak in front of the, graduation ceremony. I was a little bit sad. Ms. Plassen understand that I was a little bit sad, because I really wanted to, I put a lot of work on it, to write and to get ready for that. 3 minutes, okay. So this is very short, so I'll try to make it a little bit quicker. She told me that since you are graduating and you already wrote something, we'll bring all the, the EL graduate, and we will go to a beautiful day in North Beach before graduation day, and you can give your speech there. So to be honest, we went to North Beach. I gave my graduation speech there. It was amazing. It was a beautiful day. And I end up saying that, someday I have a dream. I was inspired by Martin Luther King Jr. I have a dream someday. I'd rather become or come back to BHS and teach BHS. I didn't know, but today I'm living my dream, as you can see. I worked for the Burlington School District for 10 years. And not just that, when I graduated, I went to CCV for 1 year. I took non-college credit classes for 1 year. And after that, I went to what is called today Northern Vermont University. I got my health science degree there. And, overall, I'm just proud, because I became the first Somali guy to ever graduate from college here. I appreciate you guys. This is what I want to say. I want to end by saying that the strongest people are not those who show strength in front of us, but those who win battles we know nothing about. Thank you. Yes.
I know you like taking questions.
Of course.
So yeah, we have 2 or 3 minutes, so we can just wrap it up. If people want to ask questions, or you're curious about a part of Noor's work or his story, or playing soccer.
Noor, can you tell us what your favorite and maybe scariest memories are from living in refugee camp?
Yes. I will start with my scariest moment. In the refugee camp, the whole point that we end up there, my parents used to live in a good life in Somalia. They had a farm, acres of land. Now they don't have it. It's looted from them. But when we came to the refugee camp, one of the things that I learned from my parents is that, they're not traumatized. The material stuff in this world, they're not very attached to it. It was amazing how we just started life. But the thing is that during the night times, there were still bullets that you can hear. That was the scariest moment. It was not safe. because it's just the border. So those people followed us. A lot of those, those gunfires, they came to refugee camp with their guns. So they were looting whatever the UNHCR give to the people. They were looting during nighttime. That was the scariest moment. But my favorite moment was that, like I said, we were not really attached to a material stuff. We were just enjoying it, just like everyone else. We were just happy. Like I can see it. Like I already, since I came here, I went twice there. Last year, February, I went there. I went back and visited there, giving back. I actually built a school there myself, me and 6 other kids. And they're learning that, something I needed. Always something that I felt like that changed my life is school. And we built the school. My friend and I, we send every month, we send about $800 to just give those teachers. It's like almost volunteers for them. But they're there and giving the kids back almost over 300 students. So it's just that those moments is what make me proud today. Yeah.
These are quieter classes. YJ students. But does anybody have a question? Do you have time for 1 or 2 more?
Ask anything. Don't be quiet. I was quiet when I was freshman, but don't be afraid. Also, you can always email me if something comes out on your head later on. So, yeah.
Will you tell us about the VHS soccer team when you played on it?
Yes.
Were you good?
I was super good. Yes, I was actually top scorer in Vermont. And UVM wanted me, but I did not do good on SAT test. I don't know if they still do that. I didn't understand it. It was not something that I was prepared in class, so it was totally different language. 7:30 in the morning, I remember going that and sitting there. I'm like, what is this? This kind of language. They never taught me this in high, So I was a little bit, disappointed because playing football and being successful in school has always been my dream. And so Jesse was the coach at the time at UVM. He wanted me to go there. And the reason I actually end up to a Northern Vermont State University is because I was sent there by a coach, Brian Bichek. He's still my friend in Facebook. We talk a lot. He says that they told me that to go there to get at least like 3.0 GPA, and so that I can transfer, which I did as freshman, and I was the rookie of the year at Johnson. So I was top scorer when I graduated here. And then when I went to Johnson State College, at the time it's called Johnson State College, by the way. It's the same college. Now it's, I think, combined Johnson and Linden. So I was rookie of the year, and I had a lot of help from the players. Because for me, the academic piece was priority, not the soccer. I knew someday I will age and I will not be able to run, but I wanted to make sure that I can educate as much as I can. So I was having a lot of help from the, players, and I decided to just stay there. So, and I didn't transfer to UVM, but that was my priority to go to UVM in the first place. It just didn't work for me, and I fell in love with the school and the people that I was around to, and how kind they were to me. So I said, you know what, I will just stay here. Yeah, so, but yeah. I still have, I know that one of my best moments playing soccer was my senior year. I wanted to win the championship, but it didn't work. I had back-to-back the quarterfinal and semifinal. I had 4 goals, two unassisted goals. And I still have that, what do you call it, the journals. I still have it, the newspaper, laminated, and it's on my wall now that my kid plays soccer. It's very good, but I always brag and say, hey, until you do this, you're not good enough. So it's amazing, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm kind of just winging it, I share things, and then I like to see where, like, what grabs your attention, what grabs your interest. I liked doing this in the previous one. I just called on people to ask me questions. So just be ready to ask me questions. Okay, but be relaxed. You can, don't let that have you sitting on edge. So I want to start by talking a bit about my name, because it must have been 4 years ago, everyone who knew me had to change how they called me. And some of those people, some of my friends, had known me only by one name that all of a sudden changed. What's your name?
Lucas.
Lucas, right. Do you go by any other nicknames?
Luke.
Luke, yeah. Is that what you prefer?
Yeah.
Right on. So imagine, right, and how old are you?
14.
14. Right, so imagine if Luke, that you've known for, friends who who've known you for like 12 years, right? All of a sudden you say, hey, I want you to call me, what's another name that you'd use if you could use any other name?
Sure. Got any suggestions, man?
Any suggestions? Help him. Suggestions.
Come on, man. No suggestions? Come on, I'm here. I don't know. You don't know? What about you with DTF?
You got a name? Yeah. Tyler. Good name, right? Right. It's a huge adjustment. Like our names, everything you know about a person is tied up in their name. And so when you start, so my wife had known me for like 7 years or something. I'm not even counting anymore. And I went from being called Thierry, or Thierry, as English speakers would pronounce it, to being called Mugabo. Mugabo has always been one of my names. It's my middle name. It means a man in Kinyarwanda. And a man, Rwanda is a patriarchal society. There's a lot of attributes, very nice attributes given to men, and that's what my parents were kind of holding on to. That like I'm a man of integrity, brave, and all these other nice things. Anyway, that's my name, and it's my Rwandese name. Thierry was my baptismal name because Rwanda was colonized by the Belgians and they brought Catholicism. And so when we get baptized, we get our French names. And so just like 4 years ago, I changed from being called Thierry to being called Mugabo because I realized that what I had been doing, and I'm just gonna jump into the story, right? Like I realized what I had been doing was letting people who didn't know very much about me, right, by giving me an easy name to say like Thierry, it almost sounds English. Some people would say Terry. It allowed people to maybe have an idea of who they thought I was or where they thought I came from, which is not necessarily my history, right, or my background. And it would allow them to kind of have different expectations or expect me to be like some other person they know, for me to fit in some box. And so this came through for me. Like that change happened after my first year teaching at Winooski. Because for the first time, I was surrounded by kids who looked like me, kids who were of the same age I was when I came to the States. I was 13 when I came to the States. Because my family is I was born in Rwanda in 1986. And do you know what happened in Rwanda in 1994? What's your name? Rosalind, yeah. Ask your friends. There you go. That's right. Yeah, there was a genocide in my country where within like 100 days, like over 1 million people were slaughtered. And we were able to escape with our lives, and we became refugees in Congo. We were there for 3 years before the war spread to Congo, and we found our way to Zambia, where we were there for 3 years. And we received asylum to come to the US with a refugee asylum because my mom is Tutsi from the tribe that was the target in the genocide, and my dad's from the Hutu tribe, which was the tribe in power at the time. So because, a parallel for that in the US is like having a biracial couples back, in the days of like deep like segregation where you had no safe home, right? We had no safe home. We weren't safe with the Tutsis because my dad was in danger and ourselves, and we weren't safe with the Hutus. So we had no home. And on that basis, we asked for asylum and we received asylum. Anyway, so I was 13 when I came here, and when I went to Winooski, this was just in 2018, so not that long ago. I know most of you were still in middle school, elementary, I don't know. So this little story, I have this little story to convey why I changed my name. Right, it was my first year. I've jumped around, but everything will connect. It was my first year, and I was scrambling. A first-year teacher is scrambling. I don't know, I don't know what's up, what's down. I have a bunch of stuff that I need to organize. I'm an engineer by training, so I hadn't taught in the classroom, but I was excited. I love being with youth. I love learning. I love just experimenting. And so I had written on the board, Migmar Uwilingiyimana. Thierry is my first name. Uwilingiyimana is my dad's name that we took when we came to the States. And so I was like, oh, what are my students going to call me? It's one of the decisions you need to make as a teacher. And I thought, I went to a Catholic school, and they called us by our last names. They say, Mr. So-and-so. But my last name is Uwilingiyimana. Who wants to attempt it? Uwilingiyimana. Uwilingiyimana, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was like, oh man, maybe they can call me Mr. U, and then this teacher who was a neighbor of mine, white dude, he'd been teaching here for a long time. He was like, you know what, just let him call you Mr. Thierry. Let him call you Mr. Thierry, it's nice and it's easy. I thought, okay, I didn't think about it too much, I had a lot on my mind, I had a lot to get in order. So then for the first year, I was Mr. Thierry, right? But then it slowly dawned on me. I'm at a school where, ever since I came to the States when I was little, I hadn't had a black teacher, let alone an African teacher. There was one exception that I don't like to even mention because that guy, I feel like Anyway, there was one exception. I didn't like him. I didn't like him because I feel like I saw him, he was my only teacher, and I was like, we're gonna have a connection. And he wasn't, he was not open, he was not warm. And I had him for one semester. But that was one stint, just one class in college. But I was 13 when I came. I had all of high school and all of college, and that was the one exception. So I was like, yeah, most of these kids, for the first time I'm around all these kids who look like me. Many kids who came from Congo. Some of them had Rwandese parents. Many of them may go on to never have another black teacher, right? And here they were calling me by a French name. Right? And so I thought when the teacher next door said, this would be easier, who was he thinking about? He wasn't thinking about the African kids for whom Mugabo it's a fairly easy name to say, right? He was just thinking about himself and the students who looked like him. But this became it didn't hit me until I found that even though I was the only black teacher in the middle school and high school, when I wanted to do things differently, I felt like I had no support and that I was facing a lot of resistance, right? Whenever I tried to do things differently, I wanted to operate more freely, around a bunch of different things. I realized my difference, right? My difference wasn't welcome. They just needed me to look different, but I was not given the room or the permission to actually be different in practice, So so like that was one. That's one thing, right? And like one way to think about that I can think about now is like, you know, who we are and our identities are a source of like they're superpower. It's like a deep. Who we are can be a source of so much strength, right? And so when that's taken away from you, and you're trying to do this really hard thing because trying to be a good teacher is really hard. You know, it feels like you know, getting in a fighting match with one arm behind your back, or worse, maybe both. So that was one. But then like the other thing that was much louder was my students who didn't realize that I had been whitewashed, essentially. Who didn't realize that I came in, that I was so young, and actually went to a school where there wasn't enough community, that when I was told to behave in a certain way, I didn't have other people who thought like me, you know, who shared my culture to look, you know, for me to make eye contact and say, wait a second, like what they're asking me is counter to what feels natural to me. It's counter to what would feel good to me. What they're asking me is to take on their things. You know, like what I'm doing is not necessarily bad, it's just different. But like these kids at Winooski, they had each other. They would be like several in a class. And I feel like they were experiencing this like othering together. They were being told to, you know, not have arms around each other. Like don't laugh too loudly, or don't like, they were being told to behave in a way that they were all experiencing that together, unpacking it together. And like they did me the kindness of thinking that I would know. And so they said, hey Mugabo, like African teacher, do you see what they're doing? Do you understand what's being asked of us? Right? Like, don't you see that like what we're doing is just who we are? And it hadn't occurred to me. It hadn't occurred to me because I think I had unlearned all of that. So between like me having a hard time every time I want to do things differently and having my students call me, I think that began a period of realizing how much of myself I had lost, right? How much of myself had been erased, right? To use your word, your theme, and it began a process of like really being aggressive about reconnecting with my identity, with my language, with my culture, in a way that made me a little combative sometimes. Right? I think I became known as a troublemaker at the school, and sometimes that's what it looks like, trying to carve out a little space for yourself. All right, I've gone on for a little bit. I'm curious what's on people's minds, what wonderings you have, what you'd like to hear more about. Yes. This is Inhoni. Does anyone know what Inhoni? Yeah? Yeah? It's a staff. Yeah, Inhoni is a staff. Inhoni is a staff in my language. So this is a wedding staff. I made this when I was getting married, around the time that I changed from being called Thierry to Mugabo. And on one hand, and I'll pass it around, is like a black kite. It looks like an eagle. That's my dad's clan's symbol. And on the other one is a brown crane. It's a crane, brown crested crane. And that's my mom's clan symbol. And then I have North Hero, Vermont, where we got married. Then I have Abasinga na Banyiginya. Those are my clans. And then I also made it, like I took my wife's father's name and her mother's name, and I made them into Kinyarwanda as well, as a way of kind of, right, I said, the Parsons are her father's family, and I called them Aba Parsons, and her mom's maiden name is Stanley, so I said Aba Stanleys, which would be kind of Rwandicizing English names. And in Rwanda, we have a culture, we have our tradition goes back to cattle herding, pastoral lifestyle, and cattle is wealth, right? And so this is cow skin, cowhide, and this is red cedar. Red cedar is Vermont, you know. This is kind of my being here in Vermont, and these are my Rwandese roots. Yeah, you can pass it around. Yeah, how did you know Imponing? What language do you speak?
My grandma and my mom speak Kirundi and also like no other language.
And then what?
Swahili.
Yeah, other language. Yeah, right on. Yeah,
Yeah, I know from Burundi and I'm from
right on. Yeah, Burundi, people know. Burundi and Rwanda are neighbors. They're tiny little countries. Yeah, and we can speak to each other. It's like an English person speaking to an Australian, different accent, but a lot of the same words. Yeah. Yeah. You asked, thank you for your question. Do you have a question for me? What's on your mind? What are you thinking? Yeah, the things that I've said, like, what have they brought up for you?
I don't really know. I don't really have any questions. You did a good job explaining.
Right on. Anything else you'd like to hear more? Right on. No. I came to Vermont in 2017. I was like already, however old I was. I was an adult when I came. I came for work. Yeah. So the first place that I landed as an immigrant was Buffalo, New York. Yeah. I don't know what feelings people have about New York. Buffalo, New York. I didn't like it. But you know, I didn't like it because it's hard to be an immigrant anywhere without community. So it's hard to like a place. But I'm sure if I went back now, I might find a lot to like. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious then. I'm gonna ask questions since you don't have questions. I'm curious in the studying of this unit, right? And thinking about erasure. I wonder in what ways this has connected with you personally, like with your family history, okay? And I'm gonna come to you behind you. Oh, let me give maybe like 10 seconds for people to think, okay? The first person to answer the question is always having to think on the spot. But like, I'll be curious to hear how this has resonated personally with y'all. Yeah. Okay, so my friend back there. What are your thoughts?
I felt a slight connection to when you were talking about your name.
Okay.
You filled out my name.
Yeah. Right on.
And then I had my first name is George.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like it's my grandfather's name on my last
Webb is?
No, George.
George, okay.
And I've always gone by that because my parents always called me that.
Uh-huh.
But my grandmother on my mom's side always wanted me to call George. Just because it's her name.
Right. Right, yeah. Our names do a lot of heavy lifting. Like, but how much have you gotten to learn about who George was?
A little bit.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
About the name thing. So my first name is Ramadani
Ramadani.
and my last name is Mikeshimana.
Mukeshimana.
Yeah.
Mukeshimana.
Yeah, so my first name was given by my mom's best friend, who was like a sister to my mom. She was Muslim, and she gave me after the
Right. So what name do you go by?
Ramadani,
Ramadani.
or sometimes Rama.
Right on. Yeah. Right on. Yeah, our names carry a lot. Yeah. You in the back. Yes. And I'm asking generally, like y'all been talking about resistance in the face of erasure, right? Is this is this the kickoff, or have you all been reading something? I mean, you're reading Night by so yeah. So just even beyond what I share today, this topic, I'm curious ways in which it has resonated with you personally or like with your family.
Well, I know that my family was from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
They came to the
Where in Africa? Right on.
they came to the US. I think there was like a war there, so
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, and there's a whole journey about like you figuring out what it's going to mean for you to be a Congolese person while also being an American. Like, what does it mean to be a Congolese American? What parts of Congolese like do you pick? What parts do you leave out? And what parts of being an American do you adopt? And which parts do you not? Right? Is that something I mean, I know you're navigating that, but like, is this something you're actively thinking about in like molding yourself and thinking, deciding who you want to be now? What year are you? What year are you right now? What year are you? Ninth grader. Oh, right on. Yeah, right. Okay. Okay, what about you? Neighbor to the right.
I don't really know. I don't really have any suggestions. I know that's like a really tough topic to learn about.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Right on. Yeah. One of the things that's getting erased for all of you, well, is childhood. It's like being a child and having space and like being forced into a big adult world, things that you wish you had more space for that you're being told there isn't. There's always like, yeah, some leaving behind that are by necessity or by internal or external forces. What about you? Any thoughts?
what's the question?
Oh, the question is broad now. It's like this topic, like how has this topic resonated with you?
Well, I guess when you like talked about your name, like it just like kind of also stuck out to me because mine's Sophia, and like I wasn't gonna be named Sophia. Like, they just like made it that because like they wanted people to pronounce my name easier.
Right.
And the name
Right.
that I was gonna have was, I forgot what it meant, but I think it was like, actually no, I forgot.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think I would have preferred if my name was like the other name that wasn't like easy to pronounce, and it would have made me feel more connected to like where like I came from on like my dad's side, because like, I was like mostly like only like learning things about like my mom's side, and like my mom's side's like from Nepal, and like my dad's like from India, like
Right
I
on.
don't really know much like about
Right.
like my culture
There.
and, like that place, and like I don't know.
Right. And you can. You're right. It's like, right? What? Like I was like 30 something when I changed my name and asked everybody to address me differently. Yeah. When you. Yeah, it's good to know that all that's still available to you. There's a question? Yeah, I'll go to this young man and then I'll come to Ali. Yes.
Okay, so during the meeting of night, we learned how like people first heard about the Nazi attack and they just like brush it off.
Yeah.
Thought it was just not going to them.
Right.
And after all this and stuff, and learning about this topic and stuff, I think the main like theme that we're getting here is that don't look don't look at things the way you want them to be, but at things the way they are.
Mm-hmm. Don't look at things the way you want them to be. Look at the things the way they are. And right, and yeah, and it's hard, right? It's hard. It's very hard to confront what might be a very ugly truth. That's right. And what a time to say that now. What a time to say that now. Yeah, thank you. What's your name? Ahmad. Yeah, that's right. That's right, Ahmad. All right. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing the staff. I got to witness it being used in your wedding.
That's right.
I'm wondering if you'd be up for talking about how staffs are used in the ceremony.
How they're used. So, yes. Was that, yeah? There is how they're used, and then there is how my brothers and I decided to use them. I will say that I don't know how people use them. Back in when they're in Rwanda, but like I made this for myself. I made a bunch for my groomsmen, so like there was a bunch of us with like these inkoni, and so when we were walking up to the front of where we're gonna have our service, we all decided to make, and we were at the summer camp, so we all decided to make a lot of noise in synchronized. Like we came in as it's hard. There we go. So we came in kind of like almost calling people to attention, making this syncopation. So that was a piece of like, I know that this is tradition. Any Rwandan person would see this and recognize it for what it is, which is like super cool. The culture works that way, that I would be traveling in the middle of nowhere. I could be in Malaysia, and if like you're Rwandan and you see this, unless you've lost your culture, as I nearly did, you know what this is. But then part of growing up here and now growing up home is getting to decide what I'm gonna do with that culture. And so we made some music with it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you everyone. Thank you for your questions.
So welcome, everybody. I just wanted to say that my path to this place started exactly where you are now, because I took several courses with two English teachers who team taught at Burlington High when I was in high school. And they taught biblical literature and archaeology and American history and European history through literature, stories, novels, maps, pictures. And it was a very integrated approach, and really, I think, helped initiate my interest in history, which continues to this day. So my path is now crossing yours, whether you're here voluntarily or involuntarily. So you're here at the Lost Mural in front in our synagogue. My ancestors emigrated from Lithuania. Many, like your family, came from other places. Like you and like your family, they came for a better life for them and their children. Making a commitment to move like that, leaving everything behind, requires change, but it does not require a loss of memory. Memories of times gone by and of a people can be and must be sustained through stories and art and now photography and video and online materials. We may not be writing history by being here, but we're certainly making history by sharing our community's history with each other. My community, with help from local, national, and international assistance, made Herculean efforts to save some of our treasures and relocate them here. We've been very, very lucky to save the Lost Mural and the Copper Ark and some of our other Torah scrolls. For us to remember where we came from and what losses we have sustained is incredibly important. We may never be able to see and share what has been lost, but we can share what we have saved. So I urge you to make an effort to save what you can with your family, whether it's through video, diaries, clothing, art, recipes, genealogy, anything that will help you remember your identity. Because who you are is where you came from, no matter where you are. and you can share your history. History matters, so be stubborn about it, is my message today. You're looking at the Lost Mural. The Lost Mural is an incredibly vibrant symbol of a lost world and of a lost genre of painting. That lost genre is the painted wooden synagogues, which existed between 1700 and 1900 in Eastern and Western Europe. Synagogues were painted with very vibrant art, with biblical themes, with zodiac themes, with Hebrew prayers literally on the walls and on the window wells at the entire first floor and ceilings of these synagogues. The painting before you is really one of maybe half a dozen of the survivors of this genre. It's believed by the Center for Jewish Art, which is a major research depository and online depository of Jewish art and architecture. It's believed that there were 3,000 wooden synagogues in Eastern and Western Europe. There's less than half a dozen that survive with their original paintings. In Lithuania alone, and that being said, so for instance, in Lithuania, there might have been 700 wooden synagogues, of which 500 were believed to have paintings. In Lithuania, there are 17 wooden synagogues that survive, but of those, there are 2 that have paintings in them, but they are not the originals, they're reproductions. So you're looking at a singular Lithuanian artistic, cultural, and historic heritage piece. There are 17 other ones in Lithuania that are synagogues that have been safeguarded as UNESCO sites, but they don't have their paintings in them. The man who painted this would have known of this style and this genre before he left Lithuania in 1909. There still would have been some left. The majority of these were destroyed very early, long before 1900. The Russians, between 1910 and World War II, destroyed many more. The Nazis then finished the job. Benzine Black paints the mural in a synagogue that is 3/10 of a mile down the street. There are little pamphlets on some of your chairs that are this, but the building looks like this. And there's a bigger picture in the room. But this whole white triangle at the top is a snow-covered roof. It's a slate-covered roof. And if you turn that around, you would be seeing the inside of the roof structure. So you're seeing the entire roof. In order to save the mural, we moved the entire roof. So you see the mural is painted on plaster. The plaster is about 1/2 inch thick. If you look at the far left corner and the far right corner, you'll see the actual plaster on the lath board. It's about 1/2 inch thick. It weighs 6,500 pounds with the entire roof structure. So in order to save the painting, we actually had to move the entire roof. In order to do that, we had to take off the other building's roof, blow out his doors, his windows, and build a building around that building, which we did with a portable roof in order for us to lift out the metal capsule that the mural is now encapsulated in. The capsule that you see was designed so that we could actually move it and then illustrate it, show it in this place. The mural is held at 11 feet high now, which is exactly the height that the men would have praying before it in the synagogue building where you're sitting, where the men would have been. The women and children would have been upstairs in a second floor gallery. That was a typical construction for East European synagogues, where in an Orthodox synagogue. And in Burlington, as you heard, there were 3 synagogues, all of them Orthodox, along with a Hebrew school. And while the copper arc came from Ohavi Zedek Synagogue, which you've seen in this building, which was our old building, the mural comes from the Chayotim Synagogue, which synagogue was founded 4 years after Ohavi Zedek. And then it's painted in 1910. Benzine Black was that gentleman over there with that board that's kind of falling, but he's there in the corner. Benzine Black is an artist, a poet, a playwright, a theatrical producer. He's very interested in promoting Yiddish as the language of the Jewish people rather than Hebrew. He writes poetry. A lot of his examples of poetry and paintings are on our website. I encourage you to look at that. He's quite a rebel in his way. He's really not your traditionalist in terms of his synagogue attendance. He's really working very hard to keep Yiddish as a thriving language. So he's having Yiddish poetry readings, and he has a Yiddish corner reading room in the Old North End. And he's doing lectures on Yiddish writers, and he's donating Yiddish books. He creates a Yiddish lending library. He compiles a Yiddish record collection, which is now at the University of Vermont. He starts to collect black and white postcards about East European Jewish life, some of which are in our display case, and some of which are at the University of Vermont in their special collections. The painting that you're looking at is depicting the biblical tent of the tabernacles. This is his description, his interpretation of the vivid descriptions as to how the tent was going to be erected. God tells Moses how to build the tent of the tabernacles with 4 tent poles. He then explains that the women are supposed to, with actually there's a man in charge of the construction of the tent, but there's another man with the women who is in charge of making the curtains. And the curtains are supposed to be made of the crimson red and the royal blue and the purple. These colors are prime colors used for, they're sought out, they're the most treasured, they're the most expensive, they're the most traded from time immemorial. They're used in royalty. Often you'll see them with kings and queens and other royal pageants from England. So what you're looking at is from top to bottom is the throne of Solomon at the bottom. On top of that is the 10 Commandments. Left and right is flanked by the lions of Judah, which are one of the tribes of Israel. The tribes, the 2 lions you can see are both receiving the law and guarding the law. Above the 10 Commandments is the crown of Torah. The crown, which I'll show you in the other room, the crown is the symbol of the priestly class. The high priest would have been the representative of the people going in and out of the tent to do prayer rituals and to pray on behalf of the people before God. And so we still use the crown in the synagogues today. Every time a Torah is placed in the ark, which holds the Torah scrolls, a crown is placed on it. And the ribbon to the left, below the crown, reads Keter Torah, which means crown of Torah. And the sun rays are God's presence in the tent. We don't depict God with any depiction, so God is evidenced by the sun's rays. And I think that it may make sense for me to take questions, given the time constraints. Any questions?
It always blows me away.
So in 1954, the United Nations, there still is the United Nations despite the efforts of some, passed a treaty for the protection of cultural property in the event of war, including books, manuscript, art, music, monuments, and archaeological sites. Well, we know that has not halted the destruction of people's memory. Destroying a people's culture and their collective memory through the destruction of their art, their monuments, their books, their papers, is absolutely an attempt to attack their souls, to erase their memory. And yet it happens in every war, including today. For those of you who have been following what's happening in Ukraine, the very beginning of the war, Russia literally sent trucks into Ukraine to loot all their arts and monuments, all their artistic pieces and monuments from their national museums. This painting by Black is an attempt by him, we believe, to safeguard the memory of these lost wooden painted synagogues. And we're extraordinarily fortunate, we all are extraordinarily fortunate to live in a community that would value this and help fundraise for it. So funds were raised from all over the world to save this mural over a 5-year period and then over another 5-year period to clean and restore it. It's an incredibly valuable piece, an incredibly unique piece, and I'm glad you're here to share it, and we look forward to sharing your stories and papers of your stories and experiences on our Lost Mural Project website, and we look forward to sharing your art in May. Thank you very much.
So Ohavi Zedek, the synagogue, the name means lovers of justice. It was founded in 1885. It was actually down the hill originally, the original building, and moved up here in the 1950s. So the first Jewish inhabitants of Burlington came to the town in the 1880s. And they all came from the same village, just called a shtetl, in Eastern Europe, in Lithuania. So it was this Lithuanian community that came and relocated here. And they came during this time in the late 1800s into the early 1900s, when there was a big upsurge in violence targeting Jewish inhabitants of Eastern Europe. So these are called the pogroms, and Jewish businesses, families, people were targeted in waves of violence that would come through. So there were whole villages that were driven out, people were killed. A lot of young men were also forced into the Russian army. This is a time, it's now Lithuania, but a lot of the countries that are independent in Eastern Europe were part of the Russian Empire at that time. And so between 1880 and 1910, there were around 2.5 Jewish inhabitants of Eastern Europe who left and came to the United States. So if you think about it, that's a pretty big population. The world population was smaller in the 1880s, and to have 2.5 million people come from Eastern Europe to the United States, and there were millions more who went to other places who were displaced inside Europe. And when they came with them to Burlington, a lot of them brought with them items that were, significant to them. If you think about it, these are people who are leaving everything they've known, a village where they've had generations of family, of memories, of community, and they're coming somewhere to start a new life where they've never been. It's a totally new experience. So I'm curious, and this relates to what you're thinking about for your projects, but what sort of things do you think people would bring with them in that circumstance? So we're talking like 1 to 2 suitcases. People have to carry their things out. They're going to start a new life. What are the sort of things that you think people might bring with them? The ideas from yourself, or you can think about like your family or
Like family heirlooms.
And are there any heirlooms in your own family that you think you would take with you, or types of things that you can think of, like jewelry passed down, or does anyone else have any like family items, things that are important to your family that you think you would want to have with you if you were leaving?
Wedding rings, but those usually are worn anyway.
Yeah, wedding rings have strong significance. I heard from some of the other groups photos. I think it's interesting to think what kind of photos you might want to take. It's also interesting, I think, we're talking about a time period when everything, all these items were physical items, and now so much of our lives are digital. Like, of course, the first thing most people would take is a phone or a laptop or something that has memories stored on it, photos. So the sorts of things you'd want to bring. So when you get up and take a look, you can see the items over here. A lot of them have religious significance. That's why they were donated to the synagogue. There's small items. There's candlesticks to welcome in Shabbat, just Jewish Sabbath. There's small prayer books, pieces of clothing, other small items that had these memories and family history that people wanted to bring with them. Okay, we're going to switch gears now. We're going to think about the other cabinet, the smaller one behind you. Has your class started to read Night already? So did you talk at all about Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass? Is that something that's come up? So this might be something. Do you remember anything?
I think so. I'm not sure, but it's like the synagogues and like Jewish-owned stores like broken into and burned and stuff.
Yes. So it was a night when Jewish businesses, synagogues, homes were broken into. It's called the Night of Broken Glass because so many windows were smashed. The next day, the streets were covered in broken glass, and people were attacked. Jewish people were attacked. And this is the time period when the Nazis came to power in Germany. Jews were being targeted with discriminatory laws, and it's the lead up to what then became the Holocaust. So this is what you're reading about when you read Night. And there's 2 items in this cabinet back here, which you can take a look at in a minute, that were in a synagogue in a small town in southern Germany. There's a Torah scroll, which is the holiest scripture in Judaism. It's also foundational. The stories in the Torah are foundational to Christianity and Islam as well. And Christianity, it's usually called the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible. This Torah scroll was handwritten. It's hand calligraphy from the 1700s. So it's really significant both religiously and historically. And that Torah scroll, and there's a wine cup, a Kiddush cup, that were in the synagogue the night of Kristallnacht, when the synagogue was attacked. And the Torah scroll was thrown out into the street, into the gutter, into the mud outside the synagogue that night. And the next day, a police officer who was not Jewish, but he went to go help clean up the synagogue. And he found this Torah scroll, thrown into the street. And he had a Jewish friend named Harry Kahn. And he took the Torah scroll to Harry and said, "I found this. I wanted to give it to you." And so Harry and his wife, Irene, who were young German Jewish couple in this town. They took the Torah scroll and the Kiddush cup to save them. And the next year in 1939, they had to flee Germany to save their lives. And they ended up coming here to Burlington, lived here for a long time. I believe Harry Kahn taught at UVM. So this became their community. And on their way to the US, they have this Kiddush cup, they have this Torah scroll that they've rescued, and they stopped in the Netherlands. So they went through the north of Europe to get to the US. And when they were there, a farmer helped them out. And this farmer agreed to hide the Torah scroll and the Kiddush cup from the Nazis who were invading. And he decided, he was a farmer, that the safest place, the place that no one would look on the farm, was actually the manure pile on the farm. So the refuse pile, the dung heap. Like, there are animals on this farm, this is their poop, it's piled up. No one wants to look through that. So he protected these items, left them inside this manure pile through the entire duration of the war, through the Holocaust, and no one found them. And after the war, Harry went back and he was able to retrieve the items, which are, in beautiful condition considering everything that they've been through for hundreds of years. He brought them here, he donated them to the synagogue, so they're there. And there's one other item in this hutch that was also rescued from the Holocaust. It was in a synagogue in what's now the Czech Republic near Prague, and it's a spice box which is used for ritual purposes as well. You put sweet-smelling spices into that. So I want to give you all time to get up and look around, to focus on, choose different items to learn a little bit more about. Does anyone have any questions before we do that? Ran through a lot. If you think of anything you want to ask me when you're looking, you're welcome to do that. And so let's all get up, and you can do a in the 1950s, and that's when the congregation moved here. In the period of time between 1880 and 1910, when Jewish migrants were first coming to Burlington, this was a time when it became very dangerous in Eastern Europe to be Jewish. During this time period, there was a wave of what we call pogroms, and this was violence targeting Jewish communities. So that was direct violence. People's homes were attacked. People were driven off the land. Jewish people were driven off the land. And also young Jewish men were targeted for conscription into the Russian army. And sometimes they were forced to serve for decades. So almost like prison sentences, very long periods of time. So it became very hard for these communities to stay because of this threat of violence and the insecurity. So in this time period, 1880 to 1910, around 2.5 Jews left Eastern Europe and came to the United States. So that's a lot to think about. The world population smaller in the 1880s than it is now, and 2.5 million people is a lot who were fleeing because of this violence and insecurity. So this was the context. This is what's happening in Eastern Europe when this first Jewish community came here. And I think one thing that's interesting to consider is these are people who often had to migrate fairly quickly, had to leave their homes, and they only had 1 or 2 suitcases to carry everything they wanted to bring. So they're leaving behind a village, a shtetl, where they had generations of memories of family, of community, and they're coming, in this case, to Burlington, a place where they maybe knew a couple of other people who had come before them, totally new world life place. And they only have this small amount of space to carry with them what they want to bring for this new life. And I'm curious to hear what you think, what are some of the things that people might bring with them if they're having to set off to start a new life? You have 1 or 2 suitcases. You can think about what you might bring with you, or this was, your family was moving. Does anyone have any thoughts or ideas? Yes? No? Are there any specific ones?
Not that I could think of off the top of my head, but stuff like that.
Yeah, the things maybe that are passed down. have been in your family for a long time. Why do you think those are things?
Because they hold a strong connection with like your family, and to leave them behind, at least personally, would be really hard for me, because I think it like connects you with those who've been come before you.
Yeah, so it's about family, memory, connection. Does anyone have any ideas for like, a specific object? Or, yeah.
We got family, old family, relative. I can like imagine like leaving those away because you know they have good memories. So I like to think of like losing them because if there's like crime going on, and it's spreading around everywhere, I cannot like leave those away. I have to keep them around us too.
Yeah, photos. Photos are so important as ways to remember and feel connected. You know, family members, maybe also the place that you're leaving if you have to leave, to remember what it's like. Yeah.
The Torah.
Yeah, the Torah. So, in this room we have items that people brought with them that many of them are connected to sacred practice, to religious practice. And people brought other things too that have more personal significance, maybe, like a family significance. Many of the things that were donated to the synagogue have to do with sort of religious practice. So there, in this cabinet over here, there's prayer books, there's candlesticks that can, for welcoming in Shabbat, Jewish Sabbath. There's other cups that are used for ritual purposes, and all these things are small because they're things that people packed to bring with them and have been donated to the synagogue over time. We're now going to switch gears and look at the smaller cabinet back here. This might be pretty hard to see depending on where you are, but you will have a chance to get up and go look at it. So this cabinet in the back corner, this represents items that were saved from the Holocaust and brought to the United States. So the cabinet itself, this wood hutch, was built in Germany in the 1930s for a young German Jewish couple named Harry and Irene Kahn. Has this class already started reading night? We started doing some of that history. So have you heard of Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass? Is that something you're nodding? Do you know, what do you?
I know it was a night where a lot of synagogues were broken into and the glass was smashed, this night of broken glass, and a lot of these places that held cultural significance to Jews were broken.
Yes. Yeah. So this is the 1930s Germany. This is a time when Jews were being targeted. The Nazis came to power in the 1930s. Hitler came to power in the 1930s. And in 1938, there was this night of broken glass. So the windows of synagogues were smashed. Jewish businesses were also attacked, and homes. And there was a synagogue in a small town in southern Germany that was attacked on that night, and the windows were smashed and it was vandalized. And there's a Torah scroll in this cabinet. The Torah is the most sacred text in Judaism. It's also foundational to Islam and Christianity. Christians usually call it the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible. So this scroll was handwritten in the 1700s, so it was already old at this time. It's very valuable both historically and religiously. And it was thrown into the gutter, into the mud on the street by these attackers who attacked the synagogue that night. And then the day after Kristallnacht, a police officer who was not Jewish went to go help clean up the synagogue. So he was helping out, and he found this Torah scroll in the mud. And he had a Jewish friend named Harry Kahn, who owned this hutch. And he brought the Torah to his friend and said, I found this. And Harry and his wife took the Torah scroll. And also, there's a Kiddush cup, a silver cup in there that's also used for religious purposes. And so they took these two items. The next year, Harry and Irene had to flee Germany to save their lives. And they went first to the Netherlands, north of Germany, and then from there they came to Burlington. They came to the United States and lived here for a long time. Harry Kahn worked at UVM, so he was a member of the synagogue, he lived here. And well, when they were in the Netherlands, they asked for help from a farmer who agreed to take the Torah scroll and the Kiddush cup and save it for them because they couldn't bring it with them here. They were moving too quickly. And he decided that the place that would be safest on his farm to put these items was actually the manure pile. So this is a farm, there's dung from the animals, there's, this is refuse, like a dung heap. And they protected these items. It's amazing that they in perfect condition now, wrapped them up and stuck them into this pile of manure on his farm. And they stayed there through the entire war. No one wanted to look through. I mean, as you can imagine, no one was thinking about digging through the animal dung on this farm. And so they stayed safe. And after the war, Harry Kahn went back and he was able to recover the items and he brought them here and ended up donating them to the synagogue. So that when you get up and take a look, you can see the Torah scroll, it's handwritten. The whole thing is written by hand. It has to be restored regularly. You might have heard about that because we have someone here restoring Torah scrolls at the moment. And there's a book open in front that shows the English translation of that page in case you're interested in looking. There's another item in this cabinet that's a spice box that's also used for ritual purposes, and that was saved from a different synagogue in the Czech Republic and donated here later. So you can take a look at that as well. Does anyone have any questions? I went through a lot all at once. Great. Yes.
The Torah scrolls from the 1700s?
Yes. All right, so I want you all to get up and in our last few minutes, take a look around so you can get up closer to these items that I was talking to you about. If any questions come up when you're looking, I'm happy to answer them.
The thread that's used to sew the 50 to 60 pieces of animal skin parchment together, there is this beautiful custom of avoiding using regular steel or other metals that were associated with weapons of war and use precious metals. So even though you can use gold for weapons of war today, it's a beautiful tradition of like something precious that comes directly in contact with the Torah. Anyway, now that I have a mic on, I can't think of anything to say. So,
how old is this girl?
This is about 150, I would say, which places it, and that's based on the way that the panels are sewn and the way that the ink is oxidized, and also place it in somewhere roughly Poland or Lithuania. Like it could very well be, this is my guess, this might have been a Torah that some of those original Jews who came from Lithuania, poor Jews, might have brought with them, especially also because it's very small. Yeah. This is like this ridiculously boring legal document, but just, I was talking about the very fact that things are even written by hand now is really unusual. In that, sorry, this is actually like dated from 1849. This is, you're welcome to pass it. This is written with the same like tools and technology as the Torah scroll, but it's a deed, and it's 405 years old.
How long does it take to restore?
Well, how long it takes to restore depends on what it needs. So in the past, I've done a lot of lettering repair. And today I'm doing a few hours of touch-up. I've actually been coming here almost 20 years and maintaining the scrolls. I live a few hours away. But 400 years ago, using parchment and feather pen and ink that is a particular recipe is just about exactly what I would use if I were writing a brand new Torah today. What else can I show you? There's nothing like putting a mic on me to like make me shut up. So,
Thank you.
this is fascinating. You know, I sat in on one of the sessions that Mr. Goldberg did about the mural, and something that I noticed is, you know, there's the 10 Commandments in the center, and the script that's used. And what he was using was basically he based his writing off of sort of a common Hebrew script like you'd read in a newspaper, so to speak, which is really different than the way it's written in the Torah. And these are all just like varieties of font. And it used to be that in the style of writing, you could really tell where a Torah was even written. So anyway. Hi.
Did you say this one was about 400 years old?
Yeah.
How do you guys acquire that?
Oh, so 40 years ago, I was at Portobello Road Market in London, and it was for sale for £10, which was about $10 then. And I've always been, and I think Mr. Goldberg and I shows, like really attached to old things and their stories. And, you know, just, we can hold this thing and it's 400 years old and pass it around and you can read it. And it's amazing. So, you know, now, like, I write something, and first of all, it's not even physical, it's just electrical impulses, and when my phone becomes obsolete, then that text might disappear. But we have Torah scrolls that are this old and older, that are, I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared, that are still legible. So one of the principles, really, of Torah writing, and our whole Jewish scribal tradition, is that this is an incredibly old way of doing things that's meant to last for a long, long time. Okay, another thing about, okay, you know 10 Commandments, right? So as you roll through the Torah scroll, the 5 books of Moses, there are, by Jewish tradition, 613 places where God says, do something, don't do something. And many of them are obsolete, like when you sacrifice bulls on the Temple Mount, you know, do this. So the last one that's mentioned goes like this, and now you write this song for yourselves. So we have the basis of our writing is the parting commandment that we ourselves take part in writing this. So, you know, most people know Torah because it's in the Ark, and at various times we bring it out and we read it, and over the course of the year, read the whole story from the beginning of creation to just about entering the promised land, the land of Israel, and then we roll it up and celebrate and we read it all over again. But the real core is the physical act of fulfilling that commandment by, if possible, you know, every one of the Jewish people writing an entire scroll themselves. And I like to imagine that thousands of years ago, we had the knowledge and the time that we could do it. So, so already thousands of years ago, this profession of scribe arose to write Torah scrolls on behalf of the Jewish people. And even an individual who has resources might say, I want you to write a Torah on my behalf. So if we had a lot of time and looked at the end of this Torah, or all of the Torah scrolls, there's about 12 of them here, the very end, death of Moses, the last letters are written in really bad penmanship because traditionally the scroll is completed in the synagogue that commissioned it, and individuals, donors, people, they write the last letters. And you know, we don't forget that really the Torah is not written so much by a professional scribe as it's written by the people. Sacred Publishing Partnership. And so, you know, we have printed versions of our texts, but there's something really special about this. And then Christianity has an even different approach, which is the text comes already in translation. So Jesus probably knew Hebrew, spoke Aramaic, which is similar, but the New Testament is written in Greek. So it's almost like this is a direct relationship with the text that's already about, interpreting and translating. And they're just different, but we do share. Play around the room or more.
Just give a ballpark. Not 304 like that. Just give us a general.
304,000. I didn't count them myself, and every single letter is made intentionally. Actually, each letter and word is sung aloud as it's written.
Wait, every Torah scroll has it?
This is the text that we've been, there's an expression of Jews being the people of the book, but really we are the people of spell checking. And we've maintained those 304,805 letters with incredible accuracy. So whether it's a large Torah or a small, one pulled from the flames 80 years ago, or one that was brought over, from in the 1600s, it's the same text. But every time it's written, it's an individual experience. Questions, answers, anything from your traditions that's similar, different, or maybe you come from this one.
You know what? Just to get a little, let's give Migmar a round of applause because we're so happy you're here.
Thank you. Okay. Tashi Delek. Tashi Delek, can you say it back? Tashi Delek? Tashi Delek. Tashi Delek. Yes. So Tibetans, they say Tashi Delek. It is a great honor for me to share this time with you. And I have a humble request for all of you. Just listen to me very willingly and make sure at the end of the session you have something to carry with you. Okay? It doesn't matter big, small, but make sure you didn't waste this time. Okay? All right, so we do not have much time, so I'm going to go right on. So I didn't choose a country for myself when I was born, but I was born in Tibet. I did not choose my parents, but I was born to my two parents. I didn't even choose my siblings, but I have 8 siblings. So those are something that we do not have control over. And then I thought I belong to that space, that small village, which is called Thingri. And Thingri is in Yuzhang region of Tibet, which means the western region of Tibet. So before we go deep down into my story, if I introduce you Tibet, Tibet is the highest plateau on this globe. It is also known as the third pole. Because Tibet being the highest plateau, it holds many, many glaciers, and from which most of the Asian countries get their water from. So therefore, besides the South Pole and the North Pole, the third pole on this globe becomes Tibet. Tibet has a very long history, more than 1,000 years of history, but unfortunately in 1959, China invaded Tibet. And it's been more than 60 years that the Tibetans, both inside and outside, are trying to find a way to go back to Tibet, to get back their own home, their own country. So that is Tibet. The leader of the Tibetans is His Holiness the Dalai Lama. How many of you know Dalai Lama? Okay. So if you Google Dalai Lama, you will know, and he is a very, very interesting person. You might want to check that out. Dalai Lama, okay? A very humble, compassionate, loving person on this globe. He actually won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1989. And since then, he became a global figure. But for Tibetans like us, he is everything. He is everything. Any Tibetan can take a bullet for him. So that is Dalai Lama for us. He is a spiritual guru, he is a political leader, advisor, guide, parent, everything. So we do not have a land, but we do have the most precious or rarest leader on this globe. So we are blessed with such a person like him as a leader. And because of him, the fire in us, the hope in us, never died until now. And it is still very strong. So that's Tibet and the leader of Tibet. And Tibetans have a national flag. We have the map, which is now distorted because of China. So, going back to my village, I didn't choose to be a Tibetan, but I am a refugee now. I didn't do anything, but I'm still a refugee now. I do not have my home. I have committed no mistake. I didn't do nothing to China, but I have to live my life away from my parents since I was 8 years old. So sharing with you a few memories of my life in Tibet. As a child, this is winter time over here, so it's nice to share how we go sliding in Tibet. Over here we do ski, snowboarding, all the fancy things, like we need gears like helmet, whatnot, the full body, it needs protection to do, something like that. But over there we have a pair of, a coat and a pant and nothing else, no protection, and it's Tibet, the highest plateau. So you can imagine how cold that is. But we as children, we are out there on that frozen river, and we will go looking for our horses. Horses means a stone that has a curve, a stone that is curved like this, and which is very smooth here. If you find something like that, that is your horse. Now you're going to push that, and you're going to jump on it, and then you slide. And you have no clue where you're going to land or where you're going to end up. But that's how we play. And then there is another thing called egg hunt. We go out, in Tibet, when you are a child, around 5, from 5 onwards, you have duties. You are not a kid. You have to contribute. Life is not that easy. So kids go out to do their own thing, like collecting cow dungs or collecting bushes for, fire. And then when they go out, they find eggs. The birds, they lay egg on the what do you call it, the ground. So when we find eggs, what we do is we take the egg and we hide those under the sand. One person has to go out. He cannot see, and one egg will be on one pile of a sand, and then there will be similar ones, and then that person has to say 1, 2, 3, 4, and he has to hit it. If he hits the egg, that's how he wins. So silly games. Those are what I remember when I was a kid, and I also remember going to circle dances, coming to music now. Most of the people in my village, they are farmers. And they wake up very early in the morning, before sunrise. They go out, they start the day. And then when the sun sets, they all come back home. And then they all gather on a common area, and then they perform circle dance. In Tibetan, it's called gorshe. So when they perform circle dance, I was very small, and I remember I am enjoying that so much that I wait every day for that time to come. And I was so good at it that the adults, they love me because I was able to dance like most of the adults, with no mistake. So they used to pat me, they used to, like me, they used to sort of like a pampering, like he's good, he's good. So I remember those days. And since we do not have much time, I was living a life. I have my parents, I have friends, I also went to, I also was a shepherd too, who couldn't control his sheep and goats. They are everywhere. I couldn't control it, but I tried that too. So, even though I was very young. So those were going on, but besides this, I have no clue, no idea about the outside world. I thought that was my world. And then I was living life. And I accepted that this is it. And then suddenly, one day, a friend of mine came with a picture of a girl who is from my village and who went to India. So the picture came from India, and they are chatting about it. And then I happened to go in that group, trying to figure out what's going on. And then I learned that the girl is in India and looks very good, clean, good clothes. And they were telling stories and saying, like the food is very good and blah, blah, blah. So it's a fantasy. You don't know anything, but you think you know. And I went crazy. I went home. I started crying. I was insisting my parents that I want to go to India, so they have to let me go. One of the reasons is my best friend already decided that he is going. So I have my best friend, and I have that story as a backup. So it's a kind of, what do you call it? Giving you the benefit of doubt that it's okay to go. My parents didn't agree, but then after a week or so, my mom, I think she is the one who has this long-term thinking with a bigger heart. So she agreed. And without letting my father and my uncle know, she started going to villages to collect money for the journey. That's a long journey from one country to another country. And it is the first time for them also. So however they did it, to cut it short, the frame of life, the image of life that I had when I was a kid is now coming to an end. It is time for me to leave my parents, my home, everything. So the only thing I remember is when I was saying goodbye, I realized what I'm getting into. But when I was going further and further away from my mother, then I sort of woke up from that dream. And then all the pain, along with that. So that suffering is something that I never ever forget. I still see that. I still see how they are fading away. I still see how further away I'm getting from them, and then finally disappear. So, a change in life. A big change in life. Okay, so, my goodness, I need more time. Anywho, so, cutting it short, I came to India, okay? And then I have to start all over again. And then I was admitted in a school called Tibetan Children's Village School, and that became my home. Not only my school, but also my home. We have foster parents. We have 40 kids in one single room. And on one bed, 3 kids sleep together. And sometimes it's funny. Remember some kids, they make the bed wet. So when you are 3 kids sleeping together on one bed, and if the bed is wet, when you wake up in the morning, all 3 of them do not know who made it wet, because all 3 of them are wet, and the bed is wet. So we have punishments. If you make the bed wet, they consider that you are being lazy to wake up and go to the bathroom. So we get punishment. And sometimes all 3 gets punishment. Funny stories like that. And then when there are different kids, some kids have their home and their parents in India. So during vacation, parents come, take the kids home, and then the number of kids becomes very small, and then it becomes very lonely and very painful. And then when you when you start your new life in a totally different place, it is very rough and very hard. The only thing I can do was go find a corner, cry yourself out, and then come back as if nothing happened. So, okay, I cannot cut it short. So I had been living a life in that school. Starting was very harsh, very rough. And as years go by, you began to make friends and you become comfortable. And then you think that life is now good. You are smiling, you have friends, you are participating in all the co-curricular activities, you are doing well, people like you, and then suddenly the school time is over. Now you have to leave the school. But in my case, that school was my home too. So it was very tough when I graduated in the 12th grade and when I went for college. So now this is...
Good news, they need more time.
Okay.
I have like four or 5 more minutes.
Okay. Okay. So besides, okay, I think I have to divert this. So to put it in a nutshell, let's say when you start something new, it is always difficult. But if you have the faith in yourself, if you believe in yourself, and if you keep going, it always gets better. So going to the college was one problem. Now that I have settled in that school and feel so good, I have to leave everything. Now going to the college is difficult for me because I'm Tibetan and I'm in India. And in that college, everybody is an Indian. So I'm the only Tibetan. So I'm the alien. Everybody is looking at me, everybody is talking about me, So the first year, very tough. Second year, started making friends. And then life goes on. You have friends, and they are nobody else. They are human beings. They are like us. So now you feel comfortable. And then the college life ends. Now you have to say goodbye to your very good friends. You have strong attachment. Saying goodbye and now believing that whether we will meet again or not, it's difficult. But that's there. It's a part of life. You say goodbye, it's painful, and then I started working as a teacher, a science teacher in the same school when I was brought up. So this is like coming back to serve. So I became a teacher for 10 years. And then I met my wife, my 2 daughters. I thought, this is it. This is my life. Life is good. I enjoy teaching. But then suddenly, we have to go to America. And then we have to leave everything. So every time when I thought that this is it for me, there is a new chapter for me. I didn't plan that. But I kept accepting whatever is coming. And I kept finding the way to make it comfortable. But throughout this journey, I have never forgotten that I'm a Tibetan. I was brushed from all the way. And there is 100% condition for me to forget who I am. But I never forgot who I am. I am still holding this. And this is called dranyan. This is a traditional Tibetan instrument. And I talked about gorshe, the circle dance. I teach circle dance here. I teach Tibetan young kids, the Tibetan Americans, who do not speak Tibetan well, but they know how to play this. They know how to dance, how to do the circle dance. And they are now so motivated that even one of the students, Tenzi Pasam from Burlington High School, she teaches the younger ones now. So it's a beautiful circle. No matter where you are, who you are is always who you are. That doesn't change. Where you are can be changed. So, timing. I'll share with you one song. I have 3 songs actually, but this is one of the circle dance. So at the end, what I want to say is, no matter where you go, it is always the Mother Earth who is with you. No matter where you land, you always have to drink you always have to have a space to stand yourself. It's the Mother Earth. So when we say think globally, act locally, we are all global citizens. Now the world is very small. So if somebody says, where is your home for me now? I would say Mother Earth. And I now no more think that I do not have a country. This globe, this earth, Mother Earth, it is my country. So if everybody thinks like this, and if everybody starts taking care of Mother Earth, that would be wonderful. Okay, here is I'm so sorry, but thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, everyone. As you heard, I'm Miss Pobric. You know me from high school. I see some of my students, and if you don't know me, you're gonna get to know me. So I'm here to read my story, but before I start reading my story, I just want to explain to you how and where is the story coming from. So I moved from Bosnia to Germany, from Germany to United States in hope to find a place for me and my family. And learning English at Community College of Vermont, I wrote this story in the English composition class. And my professor took the story and she asked me for permission to send it to a publisher. It's called Town Foundation. And it was more Bosnian story with a translation on English. It was really hard to read and understand, but she took time to kind of edit. And she did not change my words, my ideas, but so then after she did that, I received a phone call one afternoon, and someone was talking to me on the phone saying that I won second place with the story. It was really hard for me to understand what that means. I thought someone played, some kind of joke on me. But I did receive 1,500 long time ago for this story. And now this story is just here, and I'm gonna share it and read the best I can. Even though that was a long time ago, it just brings emotion and brings me back. So sometimes it's not that easy to read it, but I think it's good for you to hear it. And I know there is all of you have your own stories, so let's just listen to my story. I was born in a small town in northern Bosnia. I grew up in a lovely family house with my father, mother, and brother, who is 3 years older than me. My parents were the best parents anybody could wish to have. They gave us everything we needed and supported us the best that they could. I was happy and satisfied with my life. In our neighborhoods, there were 10 children around the same age. We played, argued, and grew up together. Our town was small but large enough for us to enjoy ourselves. I remember our school, which had many windows that from outside looked like mirrors. It often gave off reflection of a sunshine that made our school look like it was made from a gold. We call it Golden School. In my happy town, the song of a bird stopped only when the snow came. But then, for us children, childhood was even better, beautiful in this small, white, snow-covered town. I enjoyed school. It was a big part of my life. I loved exploring and learning new things. I loved reading and writing. After I finished high school, I went to college and studied mechanical engineering. After that, I also got a degree in computer programming. I worked in an oil refinery as a computer programmer in COBOL and Fortran computer languages. I was self-confident and proud myself. In 1990, I married my high school best friend. Then in one day, my beautiful life changed. In 1992, an evil named war came to my town and my country. It came to destroy my village and my country, making my friends sad and scaring me and my family. My beautiful town was becoming dark, gray, and frightening. The sound of singing birds and the laughs of children were replaced with the sound of bombing, screaming, and crying. My life and the lives of my family and friends changed. Nights with books and TV were replaced with the nights in the basements. Before a war, I thought of basement as a place for storage for woods and sometimes mice. But the basement was our only safe place when the evil war came. The mice inside the basement were not enemies. The basement darkness was safer than the light outside. And smell of humidity was better than the smell of explosion outside. My beautiful life changed in just a day. We listened to the sounds of bombs and explosions every day. The town was full of soldiers and strangers with guns. None of us knew who the strangers were or what they want in our town. Nothing was as before. Nobody trusted anyone. Only one thing was necessary. Which side were you on and what was your religion? School closed, buses didn't drive, and workspace were empty. And people were scared and hiding from each other. Most of them had the same question: why? Why us? The war that started in my country was a religious war. My husband and I were two different religions, which means we were supposed to be enemies. And our parents were supposed to be enemies too. We had to choose to stay together, flee Bosnia, or return to each other's side. With the support of our parents, after a few months of living in the darkness and the fear, we decided to leave Bosnia. 2 hours before the roads were closed, I needed to choose between my parents and my brother's family on one side, and my husband at the other. We had only 2 hours before roads would close again for tourists to leave a country. They were the most challenging 2 hours of my life. I said goodbye to my family. For me, the most difficult was to say goodbye to my brother's 1.5-year-old son. What will happen to him? When will I see him again? I felt all those questions were breaking my heart. The pain I felt inside of me was something that I will never forget. We fled Bosnia with the fear. The only place we could go was to my aunt in Germany. We were stopped several times by different armies. We were asked to get out of a car, and at that point, our lives were in a soldier's hands. What would they do to us? Would they take me? Would they take him? Would they kill us both? Those thoughts were in our heads, and we were scared to death. We managed somehow to flee the country. How? Oh, well, that's another story. We drove for 2 days. We did not talk, we did not eat. We only cried and cried until our eyes were so red that they burned. We had only one wish, to return home. We did not have home. We lived with my aunt for the rest of first few months and decided to start our lives independently in Germany. It was hard to find rooms and apartments without speaking German. We found a small room without furniture. 12 people who lived together in the house shared a bath and a kitchen. After we found a place to live, we tried to find the jobs. For my husband, electrician job, and for me, computer jobs. We tried and tried, but we couldn't. It was not possible. Everyone we asked for help answered the same: you are just refugees. That sentence often heard. The refugees need to be happy. We gave them a safe home. We knew that. But we also knew that we had to pay for this safe home. We needed jobs, we needed food, we needed to live our lives as refugees. After we learned a bit of German language from the street, my husband found a job working outside as an electrician helper, and me, the only jobs I could get were cleaning toilets and floors, peeling potatoes, cleaning and ironing for any German woman, or any job the German people would never like to do. I had to choose to stay at home without money or to take any job that was offered. I knew I needed to work and send money to Bosnia to help my parents survive the war. I remember every day after I cleaned the toilets, I cried. Every day I felt increasingly disappointed and I felt like nobody. I worked with people who were not interested in my story, not interested in my name, and did not want to know who I was. They knew she was a refugee from a Bosnian. I wished to tell them how nice my country was before war. I hoped to talk about my computer programming job, but I couldn't, because I did not speak the language. And I also knew that they would not understand and they could not help me. So I chose to stay silent, to do what I had to do. Life was tough for us in Germany and more difficult for our parents and families in Bosnia. We worried about them. We sent them money to survive the evil war. The only way for us to know what was happening in Bosnia was through the radio, TV, and sometimes a telephone call from my or my husband's parents. Every day we feared we would get the bad news. Every day we listened to the radio and hoped that our families were safe. We lived in Germany for a long time, hard 5.5 years. In 1993, our first son was born. In 1996, our second son was born. In 1997, all Bosnian refugees had to leave Germany as soon as possible because the war in Bosnia was over. They wanted us to go home, but where was our home? We didn't have a home. So our little family of 4 decided to move to USA. It was scary, and again, similar situation. A new language, a struggle to find a place to live, and again, all over again. But this time, here in this country, it was a bit different. In this country, I could use my college diploma, return to school, take some classes, and decide what I wanted to do with my life. My husband could also do what he did before in Bosnia. Today, he runs his own business, electrical business for fire and alarm securities. Our sons are 27 and 30 years old, successful and happy adults. How did we get to where we are now? I may share the story with you some other time. To conclude my story, I would like to share my 2 major life pieces of advice to all of you. First, you must fight, work hard, and believe in yourself. Love and respect yourself. When life goes downhill, you have to have a strength to pick up a shattered pieces and move on. Look at yourself in a mirror and say to that person in the mirror, yes, you can do it because I love you and I believe in you. The second advice is that war and other life tragedies can rob you and leave you without nothing but your education. Your education is what you bring to you no matter where you go. It's a key that will open the door to a new, successful life. Thank you. Okay, so any questions, anything that you want to know that maybe I left? Yes.
I'm pretty sure my bus driver's from Bosnia. Would it be good to ask him about his experience as well?
Probably.
Okay.
Yes.
How long did it take to write this book? Or this
The story? That was just assignment in English composition class, so probably a week. It was not like this. It was a different story. It was the piece of a Bosnian art that you translate in English, so. My English is still not perfect, but it's getting better and better. Each year I like to write and read and, yeah. Yes.
What were the religions?
I'm a Christian and my husband is Muslim. And I'm Christian by, my parents are different religion. One is a Greek Orthodox, one is a Catholic. So the war was among these three religions, and I had it all in just close family. So it was really hard to choose.
Have you been back?
Yes, I actually waited 4.5 years. I was in Germany before I went first time back. And I wrote another couple of stories. Maybe next year I'll share that one. How was it to go back first time after? It was very difficult. It was still like part of Bosnia under the war, and I just decided to go to see my parents finally. So I traveled from Germany to Bosnia probably 2 days and 2 nights. Usually it's like 8 hours ride. And I find a house, our house where I lived in, on a pile of nothing, and my parents were like gray, and the little boy that I mentioned him, he was like 4.5, 5, and he came in a bus to look for his aunt. That was really hard. Stayed there for probably like 2 weeks and then went back to Germany. And then since then I go every summer. I go every summer to make sure that my parents are good, that they have everything that they need, that they have a woods for winter, that they see a doctor. My mom and dad, they are 80 and 86 years old. So, yeah. Yes?
My question is the Bosnian language still like the Romanian language?
Somehow, yes. It's from similar root, yes.
My question is it hard to learn another language if you like have like English as your basic language or another language? Is it hard to learn another language?
For some people, it's harder than the other ones. I was fortunate that I learned languages pretty fast, but good question. Yes? Here? You know, my friends from my high school or college, we're everywhere. I have friends in France and Australia and Japan, and you know, when that time came, we just kind of went to different places in the world, and that's why I like social media, to follow where they are, you know, how big their kids are, and we stay in touch that way. Here in the United States, I don't have any family member other than my husband's cousins, but all my family is from Bosnia.
How long did you know?
I was thinking about the Romanian night and the knowing the war was coming, but not sure how to respond or what to do. How long did you know before the war began? Because it sounds like it was.
We really, after Tito died, and Tito was a president of ex-Yugoslavia for so long, and even though we were a socialism country, a lot of people here have an idea of like that we lived in some kind of a wow country, you know, he was a dictator, in quotes. We never called him dictator. He was a person that led us through for so many years, and our lives in Bosnia and ex-Yugoslavia was pretty good. Exactly. After he died, then the politicians started kind of talking about splitting the country into parts. And war started in Croatia first. But because Bosnia is a small little country that is made up for so many religions, we thought we will never be able to break up a country into small pieces. So we really did not believe that war will come ever, until that morning when suddenly you can't go to a town anymore, and soldiers are everywhere, and sirens are in the middle of the night, and you hear that, the explosion happened in 3 houses next to you and your house, and it was very frightening. It was actually, it came to the point like, what is happening, My childhood was not different than all of yours now. When you wake up and you go to school and you have friends and, free breakfast and, and it's just hard to process. They have to sleep in the basement, and then you can't go upstairs because you never know what's gonna happen. It's just a different mindset, and it's very frightening. And I lost a lot of friends in a war, yes. We stayed only a few months, probably 2.5, 3 months, because the problem was that if my husband and I were in a basement of my parents' house, our little apartment where we lived when we got married did not have basement. So we would go at night in my dad's basement, but then because he was a Muslim, that was not safe for him. Because all people they are in the basement were Christians, and everyone was looking at him like a little bit of, like, wow, okay, what are you doing here? Your people are just bombing our part of a city. If I would go there with his parents, then because my brother was in Christian army, and my dad, of course, they're like, okay, your brothers are there. And so, so we just could not find any place where both of us were safe until that morning when they said that we're gonna collect all women and we're gonna transfer you with the ship to the Croatia, and all men, they have to fight. That was the time when I said to my husband, if you put me in that ship, we're done. Because I was not able to accept that he would be another part of my parents. Thank you so much, everyone.
About exactly 1 minute in one last question.
Go ahead.
I would ask, just what would you want people to know about the immigrant experience and refugee experience? Like, what's something that
I mean, our school, just based on our school, have so many students. They are coming and having similar story, running for their lives, and they were in camps, and help them out. Just hear them out. Share your story and then listen to their story. I think that's very important. That's powerful. And no one in the world is leaving their own home for no reason. All these people that want to enter this country want a better job, better life, and they're just moving for big reason. Just imagine yourself. When I left Bosnia, I had a jeans and a shirt on me. And I have no pictures, no memories, nothing. It was just me and what I had in a little bag. But you know what? I made it. How? I told you that with two advices. Love yourself, push yourself, value education. Do not run away from school. That's a safe place. Education is something you're gonna earn, have forever. And that's the only way that you're gonna go and succeed in life, with knowledge, with power. So do that. I did that too. I went back to school and got my master, and guess what? Now I'm teaching you and sharing my story. And I cannot be more happier. Thank you, guys. I guess we just rotated. I have another group and you go there, and I really appreciate your listening.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.